The wind claws at my face, a frozen rasp that steals the breath from my lungs. It's a sound I know intimately, a constant companion in this desolate expanse of white. The temperature gauge on the radio flickers a malevolent -42 degrees Celsius. Another degree colder, and the diesel in the generator will begin to gel, plunging this tiny outpost into darkness. I can taste the metallic tang of fear, cold and sharp at the back of my throat. The only light comes from the weak beam of my headlamp, cutting a fragile swath through the swirling snow. It dances over the frozen landscape, revealing nothing but endless drifts and the ghosts of memories. My gloved hand tightens around the stock of my rifle. Not that it would matter much against the cold or the loneliness. The border stretches before me, an invisible line drawn across a canvas of white. On one side, this. On the other, more of the same. A vast, unforgiving emptiness that mirrors the hollow ache in my chest. I scan the horizon, but the snow renders distance meaningless. Everything is a blur of white, a swirling vortex that threatens to swallow me whole. The only sound, apart from the wind, is the frantic hammering of my own heart. I take a slow, deliberate breath, trying to find some semblance of calm. The air burns in my nostrils, a searing reminder of the fragility of life in this frozen wasteland. I am a sentinel, a solitary figure standing guard against an enemy I cannot see. But the real enemy, I suspect, is not out there in the snow. It's the insidious whisper of doubt, the gnawing fear that I am utterly alone, forgotten in this God-forsaken place. The wind howls louder, a mournful cry that echoes the silent scream within my soul. The memory hits me like a physical blow, a sudden warmth in the biting cold. Her laughter, bright and clear as a mountain stream, fills the silence of the outpost. I can almost see her face, framed by the soft glow of candlelight, her eyes sparkling with mischief. We were huddled together in her tiny apartment, escaping the suffocating heat of the city summer. She was sketching in her notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration, while I read aloud from a dog-eared copy of Neruda. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the promise of forever. That was before the war, before the border, before the cold seeped into my bones and froze the laughter in my throat, before the letters stopped coming, before the silence became the only language I understood. I remember her hands, small and delicate, reaching for mine across the table. The warmth of her touch, a fleeting moment of connection in a world that felt increasingly fractured. I remember the way she looked at me, with a trust and an unwavering belief that I didn't deserve, that I still don't deserve. She used to call me her Silent Night, a nickname born from my quiet nature and my unwavering dedication to duty. Ironic, considering the only battles I seem capable of fighting are against the encroaching darkness within myself. I promised her I would always protect her, a vow whispered in the hushed intimacy of her embrace, a promise I failed to keep. Now, all that remains is the echo of her voice, a phantom warmth that mocks the icy grip of reality. The radio crackles, breaking the spell. A garbled voice speaks in rapid-fire Russian, a language I barely understand. It doesn't matter. The message is clear enough. The world continues, oblivious to my solitary vigil. Oblivious to the ghosts that haunt this frozen wasteland. I adjust my rifle, the cold steel a familiar comfort against my numb fingers. I am a soldier, and duty calls. But tonight, the wind carries a different message, a whisper of hope carried on the frozen breeze. It reminds me of her, of the warmth of her smile, and the promise that even in the darkest of winters, spring will eventually return. I have to believe that. I have to. I clutch the small, worn photograph I keep tucked inside my uniform pocket. It's faded and creased, but her image is still clear. Her smile, a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. It's a reminder of what I'm fighting for, of what I'm protecting. It's not just a border, or a country, or a set of ideals. It's a memory, a hope, a love that refuses to be extinguished. And as the wind howls around me, I close my eyes and whisper her name, a silent prayer carried on the frozen wind. It's all I have left, and tonight, it's enough. The wind claused, a mournful cry that mirrored the emptiness within him. He checked the perimeter again, his gloved hand brushing against the cold steel of his rifle. The rhythmic sweep of the searchlight cut through the darkness, painting fleeting glimpses of the desolate landscape. Nothing. Just the endless expanse of snow and ice, a silent testament to his isolation. The radio crackled, breaking the silence. It was Anya. Her voice, usually a warm beacon, sounded strained, distant. Dmitri, there's been an incident. His heart clenched. An incident. That's what they called it when something terrible happened. What is it, Anya? Tell me. A long pause. The static hissed, amplifying his anxiety. Your village. There was an attack. A raid. They came during the night. The words hit him like a physical blow. His village. His family. Anya. He couldn't breathe. Anya, are you all right? What about my parents? Her voice broke. I'm here, Dmitri. I'm safe. But your parents, they didn't make it. The world tilted. The icy wind seemed to penetrate her bones, chilling him from the inside out. His parents. Gone. The thought was incomprehensible, a monstrous absurdity. He remembered his father's calloused hands, the way he would patiently teach him to fish in the summer river. He saw his mother's gentle smile, the warmth of her embrace after a long day of playing in the snow. All gone. Erased. He gripped the radio so tightly his knuckles turned white. And the others? The village? Many are gone, Dmitri. Some escaped. I don't know the full extent yet. They're still searching. He wanted to scream, to rage against the injustice of it all. But he couldn't. He was a soldier. He had a duty. He was guarding the border. But what was the point of guarding a border when everything he held dear was gone? I have to go, Dmitri, Anya said, her voice trembling. I'll try to contact you again when I have more information. The radio went silent. He was alone again. But now the silence was deafening, filled with the echoes of his grief. He stared out at the frozen wasteland, his vision blurring. He wanted to be there, with Anya, with his people. He wanted to bury his parents, to mourn their loss. But he couldn't. He was trapped here, a prisoner of his duty. That night, the temperature plummeted even further. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing at his resolve. He stood his ground, a solitary figure against the vast, unforgiving landscape. But inside, he was crumbling. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a son, a brother, a lover, a man who had lost everything. And in that moment, something inside him broke. The unwavering sense of duty, the rigid adherence to orders, the belief in the cause, it all shattered into a million pieces. He was just empty. Now, years later, the emptiness remained. It was a constant companion, a shadow that followed him wherever he went. The nightmares were less frequent, but they still came, uninvited, dragging him back to that frozen night, to the moment he learned of his loss. He would wake up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding, the image of his parents' faces seared into his mind. He still guarded the border, but the meaning had changed. It was no longer about protecting a nation, but about honoring their memory. It was about preventing what happened to his village from happening to anyone else. But the bitterness lingered, a constant reminder of his failure. He wasn't there. He couldn't protect them. He saw Anya sometimes when she came to deliver supplies to the outpost. Her eyes held the same sadness, the same unspoken grief. They would talk, but the words always felt inadequate, unable to fill the void that had been left behind. They were both survivors, bound together by a shared trauma, but also separated by the unspoken knowledge of what they had lost. He found solace in the routine, in the predictability of his days. The endless patrols, the equipment checks, the radio communications. They were a distraction, a way to keep the demons at bay. He immersed himself in his work, becoming a machine, a perfect soldier. But beneath the surface, the pain still simmered. He looked out at the landscape, the same landscape that had witnessed his despair years ago. The snow still fell, the wind still howled, but he was different now. He was hardened, scarred, but also resilient. He had learned to live with the emptiness, to carry the weight of his grief. He was a survivor. Sometimes, when the wind was just right, he could almost hear his mother's voice, a faint whisper carried on the breeze. And in those moments, he felt a flicker of warmth, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, love could endure. He was still guarding the border, but now he was also guarding something else, the memory of his family, the hope for a better future, the unwavering belief that even in the face of unimaginable loss, life could still find a way to bloom. He was a soldier, yes, but he was also a son, a brother, a lover, a man who had chosen to keep living, even when everything inside him wanted to give up. And that, he realized, was the greatest victory of all. The howl of the wind intensified, a mournful cry echoing across the frozen expanse as the first rays of dawn tentatively painted the horizon. The violet hues bled into a pale, ethereal pink, offering a fleeting glimpse of beauty in this desolate land. But even the dawn couldn't penetrate the bone-deep chill that had settled within him. He remained motionless, a sentinel carved from ice, his breath misting in the frigid air. Then a crackle, not of the radio, but of ice. He shifted slightly, his senses heightened, the rifle rising almost instinctively. A figure emerged from the swirling snow, not the crisp, disciplined silhouette of a fellow soldier, but something else. Smaller, hunched, moving with an unnatural gait. It was a woman, her face gaunt and etched with hardship, her eyes wide and haunted. She wore layers of tattered clothing, her hands bare and raw, clutching a small bundle close to her chest. He lowered his rifle slowly, his heart pounding a discordant rhythm against the silence. He knew, with a certainty that transcends logic, that she was one of the villagers, displaced by the endless conflict that had bled this land dry. He had seen their faces in the flickering lamplight of the refugee camps, faces mirroring the same despair that now stared back at him. "Stop," he managed, his voice hoarse, the words swallowed by the wind. She froze, her eyes widening, fear flickering within their depths. She didn't understand his language, but the universal language of fear needed no translation. He saw the desperation etched onto her face, the primal instinct to protect, to survive. He took a step forward, then another, his movements slow and deliberate, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. He unslung his backpack, his fingers clumsy with cold, and pulled out his thermos. He poured the steaming broth into the metal cup and extended it towards her. She hesitated, her eyes darting between him and the cup. Suspicion warred with need. Finally, she reached out, her hand trembling as she grasped the cup. She brought it to her lips, her eyes closing as she drank. He watched her, his own heart aching with a profound sadness. He saw not an enemy, not a threat, but a human being, stripped bare by circumstance, clinging to life with a tenacity that mirrored his own. When she finished, she looked up at him, her eyes now holding a glimmer of gratitude. She mumbled something, a word he didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. She then carefully unwrapped the bundle in her arms. It was a baby, its tiny face pale and fragile, its eyes closed in sleep. He stared at the child, his own memories flooding back, memories of a life he had left behind, a life he might never return to. The woman reached out and gently placed the baby in his arms. He recoiled instinctively, then forced himself to relax. He held the child awkwardly, his large, calloused hands dwarfing its tiny form. He looked down at the sleeping face, a wave of tenderness washing over him, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. In that moment, standing alone in the frozen wilderness, guarding a border that seemed increasingly meaningless, he understood. He wasn't guarding a line on a map, a political ideology, or a nationalistic ideal. He was guarding humanity itself. He was protecting the innocent, the vulnerable, the future. He was a shield against the darkness, a beacon of hope in a world consumed by war. He looked up at the woman, his eyes filled with tears that threatened to freeze on her cheeks. He didn't need words. The connection between them was profound, a shared understanding born of suffering and resilience. He knew he couldn't change the world, but he could change this moment. He could offer kindness, compassion, a fleeting glimpse of humanity in a world that seemed determined to destroy it. The sun finally broke through the clouds, bathing the landscape in a golden light. The wind still howled, but its mournful cry seemed less despairing now, replaced by a faint whisper of hope. He handed the baby back to the woman, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He watched as she turned and disappeared back into the swirling snow, her silhouette fading into the white expanse. He stood there for a long time, alone once more, but no longer lonely. The cold still gnawed at his bones, but a warmth had taken root within his soul. He lifted his rifle, not as a weapon of war, but as a symbol of protection. He was a soldier, yes, but he was also a human being, and in that moment he knew that was enough. He turned back to his post, his steps firm and resolute, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The border still stretched before him, a line drawn in the snow, but the boundaries within his own heart had shifted, expanded, encompassing a world of compassion and understanding. The long night was ending, and a new day was dawning, a day filled with the promise of hope, even in the frozen heart of winter.